Excellent. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us at today's webinar, High Impact Sales Coaching Strategies for Revenue Growth. I'm Chip St. Clair, Vice President of Content Strategy and Communications here at Tyson Group, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, all registrants, whether you can make it or not, will receive a recording of this webinar within the next few days, so be on the lookout for that. Second, we want to make this webinar interactive and make sure we address as many of your questions as possible. So you can send those questions either in the chat or using the Q&A. I'll make sure to get to as many questions as we can before the end of the webinar. So just get in early if you can. Sometimes chat defaults to Q&A for just the panelists or to chat where everyone can read your questions. So just make sure what your preference is on that. And then at the end of the webinar, we will provide a QR code to download our Ultimate Sales Coaching Guide. It's a practical, data-driven playbook designed to help you build a coaching culture that actually drives measurable sales performance, as well as a QR code at the end to learn more about our new high-performance sales coaching program. So stay tuned and hang out till the end. So in this session, we're going to explore how organizations can move beyond one-time training initiatives to build a structured, data-driven sales coaching approach that drives real behavior change, improves execution, and ultimately leads to measurable revenue growth. Now, I'm excited to introduce our speakers. First, joining us today is Dr. Adam Rapp, Tyson Group's Vice President of Research Integration and a leading authority on sales effectiveness. Dr. Rapp also serves as the Chaired Professor of Marketing at Ohio University and is globally recognized for his contributions to sales research, ranking number 5 lifetime and number 3 worldwide over the past 5 years. His work is focused on translating rigorous research into practical strategies that organizations can apply to improve performance. Welcome, Dr. Rapp.
Thanks, Chip.
Also joining us is Lance Tyson, President and CEO of Tyson Group. Lance leads an award-winning sales training and consultant firm, Tyson Group, a 3-time Inc. 5000 honoree, and is widely recognized for his expertise in data-driven sales performance. As a best-selling author and trusted advisor to some of the world's most respected brands, Lance has spent decades helping organizations improve execution, strengthen sales teams, and drive consistent revenue growth. Together, Lance and Dr. Rapp will share practical, real-world perspective on how to transform sales coaching from a reactive activity to a structured system that drives performance. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lance.
Thanks, Chip. Appreciate it. Great intro. I had to look behind me to see who the heck was presenting here. So I'm glad everybody's here today. I'm actually really excited that I get to do another session with Dr. Adam Rapp. Him and I seem to have a lot of drinks and a lot of steak together, at least once a month, and we're always talking about sales performance. And ironically enough, we met about 10 years ago, and we'd always talked about getting together, and we were fortunate enough to recruit Dr. Rapp to the team over the last year. And with that, we've installed a lot of data-driven strategies around sales performance, and of course, coaching with leaders. And Dr. Rapp's really driven a lot of our philosophy with our methodology also. And, as him and I were getting ready for this, we started to look at, where coaching fails, where does it win? How does it get sticky in an organization? But we thought we'd first share with you some things that we definitely know about coaching. If you look at any industry data, some of the most important things is to realize, really, if you're a sales leader here or a sales manager, you have a frontline sales team, or you're leading a sales organization, the industry averages say that 25 to 30% of coaching is actually tied to revenue outcomes. And we fashion ourselves at Tyson Group as we're an organization that drives predictable revenue through optimizing sales effectiveness. And when I see stats like that, that just scares me. Fewer than 35% of sales organizations actually have formal coaching frameworks. It is up to the individual to decide how they're going to coach. We're always asked, do we coach in one-on-ones? Do we coach in a sales meeting? Do we coach attitudinally? Are we coaching behavior or skill? A lot of the coaching that Dr. Rapp and I see, it's like, hey, we're down by 2 touchdowns. We got to score more, right? Like that's not coaching. That's just a blinding flash of the obvious. And that structured coaching can actually drive higher quota attainment. We have a diagnostic internally called Sales Team Science. over the last year and about a quarter, we've talked to 300 sales leaders, 1,000 salespeople we've done diagnostic with, and over 25 different organizations. We find across the board coaching's inconsistent, which supports the stuff up top. Coaching is not tied to pipeline stages. Feedback is always subjective, and typically coaching's reactive. It's a lot of, if it is off performance, it's actually off late stage things like, hey, I got a deal coming up. This is ready to close. Dr. Rapp, anything there that actually stands up out to you based off your own research?
No,
And
it's
can,
spot on, Lance. First of all, thanks for having me. I've done some research on this, surveyed people myself, surveyed people with Tyson Group, and your numbers are spot on, right? I believe it's about, through some research that I've looked at, about 28% of organizations actually have some type of coaching framework. Whether it's effective or not, at least they have one, but the most organizations simply don't. They don't have anything in place. And those that do, based on the research from Tyson Group, it's the same thing. They don't know where to implement it. They don't know how to implement it, which has really led us to this conversation today because there's some huge weaknesses and gaps out there that need to be filled. And I think your analogy about down by 2 touchdowns couldn't be more accurate. We have all seen it, and honestly, we probably have all done it, where somebody's not hitting a goal, not hitting a number, and our response is, go sell more, go do better.
work
And
harder.
yeah, work
Right?
harder, spend more. They're not grinding hard enough. We've heard all of these things, maybe about us, maybe said to other people, whatever it is. That's simply not coaching. And
Well,
we know
yeah.
that coaching can move the needle. So,
Yeah, no doubt. And that brings up our next topic or our next talking point is like coaching is really more about performance as opposed to activity. We have a ton of our clients that all have all these hustle awards and things like that. How many phone calls you're making, and those things all lead up to a sale. Very high performance sales teams actually coach performance based things like can they win an appointment? Can they get a quota? What's the proposal look like? So it's performance based, not like how many dials or reading the CRM data. So when you look at sales coaching and performance, player coach, practice coach, game coach, practice coach. What are some of your thoughts here?
well, so I think you're again, right, spot on. It's this is a lever, right? Coaching is a lever to achieve better performance. But the way we do it is we look at some of these behaviors. We have to look at some of the things that folks are doing, identify what some of these weaknesses are, and then see, okay, what can we do? Right? What happened? Where did we land? How do we change it for the next time? How do we improve it? What are some of those gaps or deficiencies? And the thing is if we're not actually changing people's behaviors, if we're not truly impacting them, then it's just activity. All we're doing is just having conversations. And we're calling it leadership and we're calling it coaching, but it's not, as I said, it's not moving that needle. And the only way you move the needle is through the behaviors that lead up to it and looking at those things that directly impact it. And the problem is when we dive into just examining the pipeline or the end of the pipeline and not the steps in the process to see
Right,
where the
right.
breakdowns occur, that's where we're missing.
Sales management, has come a lot about right now. It's about gauge watching. There's so
Yep.
so many enablement tools. They're looking at all these things. They're looking at activity, and then you think as a leader, your job is to only monitor the gas gauge or the speedometer. Where does it break down, Dr. Rapp, in your opinion?
Okay, so this is a hot button for me, Lance, right? There's a lot of different places. I think the first thing we've already mentioned a couple times is just the pipeline inspection. Okay, we're missing there. Everybody has, not everybody, many organizations have a CRM. Many of them have a dashboard where they're just looking to see where that number is, how close they are to the number for the quarter. And they're like, okay, we got to hit that number. They're not actually looking at the things that lead up to it. With that, we have absolutely inconsistent execution in the sense that we don't have a formalized coaching plan. There's no structure, which means there's simply no impact. If we're not doing this the right way, if we're going off a gut feel, then we're not going to have the outcomes that we need to. A lot of managers, A, don't have that formal process, so they don't know how to do it. And then B, they don't know what to coach on, right? We look at a lot of leaders that have moved up and we see, with the turnover we're facing, with boomers retiring, And younger people were being promoted into leadership roles much more sooner than they ever have been before. And then they need to coach other individuals, and they're lacking that skill set. And the other point is we're coaching the wrong people, right? And I know we're going to talk about that throughout today, but sometimes we're targeting the wrong individuals to coach. And so
Right.
we're looking at
Right.
people, and I've worked with a lot of organizations, and I ran a research study that I published where I asked managers, who are you coaching? And it was the low performers. And the argument is, I'm trying to coach my low performer up to average. And when that happens, that's problematic because oftentimes we ignore the mid or our top performers, which there's a huge ROI there. And I mean, that's
No
a
doubt.
miss.
So somebody in the chats even asked about Tyson Group. When do we coach in our own organization? We have an ism in the company that says, and we eat our own dog food. Number one, I mean, we're not three times Inc. 5000 for on accident. That's on purpose. We can sell. We coach all over the place. One of our isms is you can't lead or be led if you're not coachable, right? That's really, and we also keep score on behavior. So that is there has to be a structure. What you said there last. What does great coaching look like in your opinion? What's the best coaches look like?
The best coaches are it's so we're going to talk about it, but we have kind of that the group coaching. We have individual and personalized coaching where
Right.
a great coach will look at individual gaps, deficiencies, and weaknesses for a person and coach to them. That's the first thing. The second thing is they have a system or a process in place. I'd never forget, I worked with a gentleman and he would say, hang on, you're about to be coached. And whenever I would hear that, it was just a bunch of feedback getting thrown at you. And it wasn't a formalized process. And
Well,
the
yeah,
third,
because there's a huge difference between getting feedback and getting
yeah,
coached. It's a
yeah,
huge difference,
yeah. And
right?
the third thing is you have to have some type of rhythm. There has to be some cadence. There has to be a plan in place. Like, sure, there can be some freestyle coaching on the fly, but that's not great coaching. Great coaching has a plan, has a process, has a timeline, and we know what we're trying to achieve and the outcome is.
There's no doubt. And another thing on if everybody looks at that second bullet point, I find great coaches are just as good at telling somebody what they do well. Like not it's not if you look for the bad in mankind, you'll surely find it. Any fool can criticize, most fools do, right? And I think when you are coaching, like if I were gonna tell somebody what they're gonna do well, I'm gonna pick one thing they do well. I'm not gonna give them a laundry list of things to do well. And a great coach also picks one thing to coach on, not a laundry list, right?
So yeah, and
And
one
it's the
more
most
point on
impactful
this.
thing, right?
Yeah. One more point on this, Lance, is I saw it in a presentation years ago, and somebody said, "Hey, you don't coach, you don't drive by the rearview mirror."
That's
And that
right.
has always stuck with me because it's the idea, hey, we look at the past and we look at our failures and challenges, but we coach and we give developmental feedback moving forward on what to do next. Because sometimes this coaching can turn into me just looking at your past failures, your weaknesses, the sales you missed on, and just harping on those and banging on those. Where it's like, hey, look, we both know we missed the sale. We both know we had a struggle or challenge. Okay, we recognize it. We identified where the gap was, but then we say, okay, how moving forward, how do we ensure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, and that's where the timing comes in too, right? Like it's that coaching environment. It's looking for the timing to do it. Sometimes there's fresh wounds, and that second bullet point we're going to get back to. I was at an NBA team recently down south, and we were working with about seven leaders, and we started to talk about focusing on who they were coaching. And the tendency across the group as I did the interview was there, if you look at what Jack Welch used to do with his leaders, he used to say, I have 10, 40, 40, 10. I got my top 10%, I got my next 40%, I got my lower performing 40%, and then I got my bottom 40, right? So 10, 40, 40, 10. It seemed those leaders of that team, and there was a good 60 salespeople. The bottom half was getting coached more. And
Yeah,
hey, like I don't spend a lot of time with my underperforming stocks. I make everybody move up, not move down. I'm not saying those people don't deserve to get coached, but we have a
sure.
tendency to get hands off the top performers because we don't mess up. So let's talk about that environment, Dr. Rapp.
Sure. And I think, and it fits right into this, Lance, is like, who are we coaching? Like, and are they open to it? Like, are they ready for the coaching? Are they prepared? Do they understand? I think the thing is this has got to be embedded in the culture of the organization,
That's right. That's
right?
right.
And it's got to be a part of it where people know, hey, look, there is going to be, and to your point earlier, there's going to be positive and there's going to be developmental. Like, I don't always
Right.
say critical, say net developmental, and how we're going to get better. And when it's part of it and people get used to it and familiar with it, quite honestly, they'll start to look for it. Because in the sales world, and for most of us, additional sales means additional compensation. Hey, if you can help me get better and improve, and I can raise my compensation, if I can help my customers, whatever it is that motivation for me, then I want that. So if it's embedded, and it has to be embedded in the culture, it really does,
There's
right?
no doubt. It
And
does. It does. It
yeah,
really does.
and if it's not, then what happens is your reps aren't prepared for it. They don't accept it. They don't listen to it, and then it starts to break. Then it starts to become a trust issue. It's which then that starts to exacerbate into a lot worse things, right?
Right.
And lastly is it's got to be the bottom bullet point. It's got to be relevant, because if it is relevant and if it matters, it will drive adoption. And to my point, if salespeople say, yes, this is helping me close deals, helping me improve, better quality of life, whatever that outcome is, right? Then they're going to be open to it and they're going to want it. But if it's just generic and it doesn't hit, I mean, we've all done this. Every organization has had some type of online form we had to fill out or some type of online training
That's right.
for whatever it is, for security or HR or whatever. And if it's just generic, we all just click through it mindlessly, right? We get through it, we take the little quiz at the end, and we're like, okay, great, I'm done.
That's right.
And it
That's right.
doesn't have an impact. And if that's what our coaching is, it's the
Checking it
exact same
off the
outcome.
box. No doubt. Right.
Yeah.
Like if I'm listening to Dr. Rapp and one thing I'd write down as a leader, do I have a culture of coaching? And then a lot of questions we get that are very tactical with what Dr. Rapp's talking about is how do you even approach coaching, right? Are you open? Probably the first question you want to ask if I was going to coach Dr. Rapp and he's one of my teammates, I go, hey, Dr. Rapp, are you open for some coaching? Like I'm going to ask him, are you open for some coaching? I'll know real quick based off his body language and how he responds to me. And the other thing too, writing somebody an email or chatting to somebody, that's not coaching.
No,
This is
no.
live belly to belly stuff. And I think the last thing off this is so important. There's spots to coach. There's floodlight coaching and there's spotlight coaching.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
your floodlight coaching is like the coaching you want your whole team to hear. We just installed a sales leadership operating rhythm with an organization that has several brands. And one of the things we put in is in their sales meetings to have more like floodlight coaching because they were doing all their coaching spotlight coaching in one-on-ones. And I'm like, hey, half the stuff you're coaching on here, people have to hear. And then we haven't even talked, and we aren't going to talk in this webinar about training because training is different than coaching, right? They're two very different things. So that brings on the next piece, which is like, are you coaching with some data? Let's talk about that. This is your specialty, Dr. Rapp, right? We go back to
So,
slide.
so I'm a data guy, right?
You
Publishing
are a
papers.
data guy.
I'm
You
I'm I'm a
are
I'm a
Dr.
data guy.
Data. Dr.
Um,
Data.
and writing these research papers and looking, it's all driven by data and it's understanding relationships and what's happening. And as a leader, we have to have this. And if we're not looking at data, if we're not, then what we're coaching on is we go back to the pipeline, we go back to what we missed. We're trying to coach on that, not why, but what we missed. Where that's, I mean, again, go score a touchdown. Okay, how? How do I do that? So we have to look at some of this data. And the other piece is if it's just an opinion, then it's what's visible. It's what we
That's
see.
right. That's right. That's right.
And most of us in sales organizations, we're virtual. Like before work from home ever happened, we were virtual. We're in the field, we're doing stuff, we're out there. A lot of the behaviors simply aren't visible. We go back to the pipeline, which isn't representative of everything the skills and behaviors and competencies a rep has to have. And so we'll only look for the highly visible things, which they may or may not be the things that are impacting the performance. So the data is what gives us the information to give personalized and precise coaching.
There's no doubt. And I'm going to go there. There's a question from the chat, Dr. Rapp, where somebody had mentioned earlier about there's not consistent coaching. So we last year we did about 2,500 surveys from training that we did.
Mhm.
Okay, so post training, our NPS scores are really high, and but when we asked the question from the managers, what's more information you need, and then you see from the participants are like, hey, I need to be coached more, right? Almost one out of five, a little bit more, one out of five says, I need more coaching, right? And then poor coaching, right? Good coaching versus poor coaching. That was another comment in the chat.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with what Dr. Rapp said about having a consistent way to coach. The problem in most organizations is you don't have a framework. Predictable process yields predictable result. Ironically enough, and this is a shameless plug for Tyson Group. This week we've launched high performance sales coaching. This is part of our launch to actually certify and give a badge to our customers on coaching. We actually want to teach leaders how to coach like our trainers do because there's a methodology to it, as opposed to you having some operator who had half okay results coming in and spewing something that's not proven. So, like, that's important. Predictable process yields predictable results. So let's dive into the data, Dr. Rapp, a little bit.
Sure.
So pay attention to this because we're gonna lay into some data for you. We're gonna share some data.
And I'm going to touch on Dale's question, who put in the chat there that you just answered, Lance. The number is 28% is what other
Oh, okay,
organizations,
that
that's
was
what other organizations have found. My personal research, that number is much lower. Like a formalized, you ask managers, do they coach? Yes. You ask them to recite or lay out their coaching process or methodology, if you will. I landed about, and this is an estimate, about 12% would be my guess to actually map out how they go about doing it systematically. So to Dale's question, it's just not happening. But let's go ahead and move on to this. So there's a lot of things happening here. We put some colors on this so you can see it and so the audience can see what's happening here. But this is a sales competency assessment that we run within Tyson Group. And this is with a real organization. And obviously we blinded it. Everybody except Frank Sinatra is upon at number 5. And what this shows us is this shows us an organization, everybody responded to it, and we kept it small so everybody could see 10 people and competencies across the top. And the competencies are grouped by kind of the personal traits and characteristics in yellow. We have some general business acumen in the purple, and then we get over to the right in the green, and we have sales competencies. So I think we can see that. And so from a coaching standpoint, what data does is this gives me a snapshot of my organization. So, excuse me, I can look at this and even though I'm a little bit overwhelmed, I can look at it like a heat map. And if you're familiar with heat maps, there's areas that will start to emerge. So here, my dark greens and my greens are going to be my stronger areas within my organization or my sales team. As I get into my darker oranges and reds, that's my weaker stuff. So, hey, green means go, red means stop. And so if we take a look at some of this, a quick snapshot, we can say, hey, okay, we see seizing new opportunities on the far right looks pretty good, right? We look over time management, we see that's pretty strong for everybody. And so from an overall coaching standpoint, so if I want to do a systemic approach, I can start to look across some of these different areas. Right? And so that's if I want to do a training or a coaching session, excuse me, for everybody. So we can run coaching in a large meeting. You talk about spotlight, floodlight, right? I can do a large coaching if I want to, and I can pick some of these areas now that I know. But obviously, some of these things just simply aren't that observable on the surface. They're not as visible as I mentioned. So the idea of adaptability, unless I'm in the sales call with you, I may not be able to tell whether you're changing as you go and adapting to that customer, but this is going to give me a much better look. So then if we go from here to the next slide, Lance, and if we carry Frank Sinatra through, that's what this is. So now what I can do is I can look individually. So I go from my overarching, and you can tell I get excited about this. I go from my overarching org to now my individual. And so what I see here is I have a stacked rank of competencies for my organization. Time management, whatever is at the top, is the strongest for the entire organization against the benchmark numbers. We are strongest at time management and then recommendations, so on and so forth. We get to the very bottom, we're the weakest at handling accounts, providing feedback to customers, right? But then I can look at Frank and I can see how he compares to the organization. This is where the rubber hits the road because I would say, wow, based on the first one, the overall organization's really good at time management. It's our greatest strength. Frank is really struggling. Like critical need. That means he is in the bottom 5% across the thousands of people we have surveyed. He is bottom of the barrel. So he is wildly struggling. Here's one thing I know. The more effective we are managing our time, the more effective we can be at sales and completing our jobs and tasks. So from
That's
a
exactly right.
personalized coaching standpoint, I'm going to engage Frank with some time management. I'm going to start talking to him about those different areas, whether it be organization, prioritization, procrastination. I'm going to start to dig into some of that with Frank because I know that that's a behavior that can help him achieve, right, higher performance goals in the long run.
Yeah, no, I do want to dial in on something because one of the questions earlier, and if you look at our earlier slides, when do I coach? What do I coach on? How do I coach? Right? Most coaching that we see in organizations until we come in and install a sales operating rhythm is managing by walking around. It's all observational. It's all opinion. It's completely opinion based. By the way, also, if you're working with a training company that's not doing this, and this is not DISC, this isn't Myers-Briggs, this isn't some personality test. These are competencies we can measure and are against a benchmark. So when we work with organizations, and our training team looks at this too, before we go in somewhere, we're making decisions on what to train and coach on off of this, and we're allowing our customers a way or methodology to train on by high performance sales coaching. It's critical. It has to be data driven. Other than you just manage by walking around or looking at what the pipeline says. Where are they? They're important. They're indicators, but does this person have the skill to get it done? And you may find some of your people just won't be able to overcome this. You can't, I just tell my sons play ice hockey. You can't teach quickness. You're either quick or you're not. So there's some skills that people aren't good at, right? And then you got to make some decisions. You may actually corroborate some of your decision making. Maybe you got somebody in the wrong position, or maybe it's time, right? Let's look at like performance quadrants for a second. Like who
Sure.
do you coach? Where are they at in the grid? So these sales performance quadrants, typically your salespeople fall in one of these four quadrants. You have stars, you have folks that are new and developing, you have folks that are plateaued and non-performers. Years back, there was a crew I was working with at the Browns, and we did this huge survey on where their people felt. And one of the leaders who's now down at F1, his name is Josh Young. We were going over his team. A lot of his team members fell in newer developing. And every time I tried to move them down to plateaued or non-performer, he would go, "Oh, they're a really good locker room person," right? So all your people can't be new and developing, right? You got to make a decision. Say, look, I flat out have a non-performer here. I have somebody here that's plateaued. I'm not going to get any more at. How many of the plateaued people can I have? Nine points, nine rebounds. Who's new and developing, or who are my flat out stars, right? So comment on some of this stuff, Adam, Dr. Rapp.
Sure. So when I look at this, Lance, I look at this, I look at, if you're familiar and for my academics in the room, I know you are, others like the sales career life cycle where we go from exploration to establishment to maintenance to disengagement, which tracks along with this to some extent. And then if you're familiar with some of the motivation research and some of the work that Mike Ahern and Tom Steenberg put out in Harvard Business Review that talks about your stars, your core performers, and your laggards, all of these, whether you look at this quadrant, whether you look at the Harvard Business Review, the career life cycle, they all point to the same thing. Coaching is absolutely situational
That's
based
right.
on the
That's right.
individual.
That's
Because
right.
my star is going to need a different type and form and engagement of coaching and cadence than a newer developing or a plateaued individual. I need to start to change those behaviors. My non-performers, obviously, we're
Wait, are you
coaching.
actually saying this isn't a one size fits all? Are you serious?
That's
Wait,
exactly it,
really?
right?
It's not? You mean it's
Well,
just
I
a
mean,
broad brush?
like, look at it. I mean, I also teach undergraduate students. And to be clear, in a class of 40, there's some variety in there, right?
Yeah, no
And I
doubt.
mean, I have my 4.0 students and I have my ones that are looking forward to Thursday night happy hour, right? And then and some of that's not mutually exclusive. But the thing is the idea is that it's got to be situational. I need to look at these individuals differently and engage them in a different manner to have the most success, right?
You
When
know,
I think about
it's so interesting you say that. When our train, and you know this, Dr. Rapp, when our trainers hit the ground and we have to coach, we always coach right away in the classroom the top performers because then everybody else falls in line, right? So if you don't coach those top performers, they're the one. If I can get a 2% better on a star, it's
yes,
better than a 10% better on somebody who's plateaued, right? That's where your ROI is right there. But a lot of us don't want to, we handle the stars a little bit with kid gloves. He's not saying not to coach. You might have to coach him differently, but you got to coach. You'll make more on the stars than anybody else.
in a research paper I published years ago, the manager's like, why ignore them? They don't need it. And I was like, oh, and then I talked to the reps,
Really?
and the reps are like, look, the reps told they're like, do you know how frustrating it is to see all of these underperformers getting coached, getting time with management, getting all of these resources, and that's how they viewed it as resources, time from their leader. You see how frustrating it is that these underperformers are getting this. I'm killing it, 200% of quota, and I'm out here on an island.
That's right.
And it's like,
That's
so what's
exactly right.
next? I'm like, so what do you do? It's like, well, the next thing is the conversation you don't want to have. It's like, hey, man, I'm going to look somewhere else where I'm appreciated. And so the idea of ignoring these folks, A, you're right, Lance, you can get your biggest ROI there. But also these individuals, they deserve the attention. They need the attention. Maybe sometimes it's more of a meaningful conversation with them,
No
but they
doubt.
can become mentors, they can become champions, they can help, especially if they got a skill set, they can help your new and developing folks. They
No
might be able
doubt.
to drag your plateaued folks up a little bit, right? And so ignoring that quadrant, that upper left, that is a bad strategy.
It is. It is. We're going to introduce a framework in our new program, high performance sales coaching.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have Dr. Rapp walk you through it. Okay. And then from there, we're going to get into more situational coaching and joint calls. So go ahead.
Sure. So this is something, and we've referenced it multiple times now about we need a process. We need a process and a plan to engage with a rep, with an individual to coach them. Here's the thing. I'm assuming everybody on this call and listening, and everybody that will listen, has some sales experience. There's a sales process we follow, and we know that. The idea that we go out and we build rapport with somebody, with a customer or prospect, we ask questions, we listen, we deliver value, we make a recommendation. We know there's a process, right? Those of us that go to a customer and just tell them what to do don't have a lot of success in sales. So the thing is, when we get promoted to a leader and people ask the question, are good salespeople good leaders? And well, that depends. If we adopt this sales framework and bring it to this higher level as a leader, it fits there as well. And that's what the coach model shows us, right? When I'm going to coach somebody, if I'm going to work with somebody, and whether it be a student here at Ohio University, whether it be a salesperson, what the first thing is I'm going to clarify, help me understand, ask the question, what's going on? I see we're struggling here a little bit. Talk to me. Because we only see a fragment of that individual's life and experience. There are so many other things happening. I want to get a full picture of what's going on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to observe and specifically listen to what they have to say. We might be coaching something that they're not putting data into the CRM. We start to challenge them on it, and all of a sudden they say to us, "Hey, I've never been trained on how to log into the system." That's a totally different conversation than somebody who's just not doing it for one reason or another. So I'm going to coach, right? I'm going to clarify, I'm going to observe, and then I'm going to advise, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, here's what you need to do. So after I listen, then I'm going to make my suggestion and say, here's what you need to do to move forward. But understand, we can't stop here because if I do have trust with you, Lance, and we have a good relationship, anytime I'm coaching somebody up, I'm telling you, you're not as good as you could be. And
That's
that's
right. That's
difficult.
right.
That's difficult to hear. And that damages our relationship a little bit, especially if we do trust each other, because I feel like I let you down, right? Even though it
Certainly.
comes from a good place. So then what I do, and especially generationally, we've seen it change. And I don't want to get into the Gen X, millennial, Gen Z conversation, but we've seen that more people have become hypersensitive to coaching, direct coaching, and me telling you how to get better, how to improve. So what I like to do is I like to bring it back around and commend them and say, hey, look, even though we're struggling here, you're doing a great job here. I'm going to pick them back up because I want their buy-in. I want their belief. Now, I'm not, and that's the commend step. I'm not going to stop there because then you walk out saying, wow, Lance loves me. I'm coming back off with the handoff. And that's the challenge. That's the, hey, okay, based on today's conversation, here's what I need you to do next. And that is the specific action steps. That's the, just like closing a sales call. When's our next meeting? What's the next step in the conversation? Here's what I would like you to do next.
That's
So we
right.
talk about clarifying, observing, advising, commending them, and then handing off with direction moving forward.
And as you notice in this, we're focused on one thing. We coach one thing at a time. We commend one thing at a time, right?
Yep.
This is impactful. Let's get situational, like we talked about before. Let's talk about joint calls.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. And joint calls, think about this as a leader. Part of your job is to be a practice coach, but then you got to be a game coach, and then you formulate your practice from the game. So if you're not doing any joint calls with your salespeople, then you're just looking at a fuel gauge and a speedometer, and or you're just practicing with them. How do you know what to practice on? One of my SVP of revenue, Price Johnson, is constantly, him and I talk about our kids all the time. And when he's coaching his son, he's very prideful with how his defense plays because his coach's defense. But he's always talking about the adjustments he makes from game to practice, right? It's live action fire, but that's also what he does with our salespeople. So talk about roles there in strategy there a little bit, Doctor.
Sure, absolutely. So, and I know people call it different things. Some call it, the ride along, some call it field trips. I've been on a lot of these different ones where they have different terms. But if I'm going on a call with you, there's a couple pieces we got to keep in mind. Number one is that pre-call plan, right? Like sitting down beforehand and determining what are our goals, what are we trying to accomplish, making sure there's alignment. There's nothing worse that can happen than you get in front of the customer and you don't know who's doing what. You don't have a plan, you haven't figured it out. That's the clarifying roles. Am I coming in there as an observer? Am I taking an active role in this call? What are we trying to do? And then once we go into this call, so we build the plan, and there's a lot of time invested into this front end before the call happens, Lance. And once I get in there, once I'm in that call, we follow through. And here's the thing, please do not coach your people during the call. There is nothing, in my opinion, more demeaning and more frustrating for a rep that I'm in front of a customer, especially if it's a customer I've worked with and have a relationship.
Yeah, you talk about a loss of credibility, right?
Right there.
Right there.
Because then as a customer, I'm like, okay, well, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Am I talking to the wrong person? Right? Move forward. And if there's some challenges, there's a way to pick up and kind of move this forward. But then afterward, the debrief, that's where you break it down. And that's where you go through. We talked about the framework, the 5 steps of COACH, coach. That's a great place to use that and say, okay, let's talk about the call. Let's talk about the goods and the bads. One of my favorite things to do after one of these joint calls is asking them. So before we get into it, how do you think you did? I love to ask that question because 99% of the time people will be like, I think I did well, but I could improve. Let's start there.
Yep,
And then
no doubt.
what could you
No
improve?
doubt.
And then I'll start to break it down and say, okay. And to your point, let's focus on one thing. I'm not going to pile on every single thing that went wrong. I'm going to pick out one of the bigger issues that
And
can
something
be
they did well too.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
did
absolutely,
really well.
right? Yeah.
You know what's really interesting? A lot of the leaders, I know a lot of the leaders that jumped on this. I was with an NFL team not long ago, and we were working with five sales leaders, and I asked them if they on their joint calls do they sell, and the leaders were like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "If you take out your sales with your people, how good would they really be?" And somebody goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "If you extract all the calls you went on them, and if you weren't there, would they sell as much?" And they go, "No." So the other thing too is when you go on these joint calls, some of you leaders come from sales. You'll have a high desire to you got an addiction problem there to
Yeah.
sell. Your job is to observe, maybe even coming up with a score sheet and setting like Dr. Rapp said, like, look, here's some of the expectations here. And then you set the expectations. And if you look at the last part of the coach model, it's establishing that accountability, right? And it becomes their responsibility. They have to own it. Let's talk coaching cadence for a minute. And I think this is really important. This goes back to what we said earlier. This is the culture of coaching. You know,
Yes.
somebody said in the chat, like, hey, I want to coach and train more, but my senior leadership doesn't believe in it. To you, I'd probably take some of the stats we have here and go back in a with some proof and say, look, the ROI on this is exceptional, even if it's them investing in you to become a better coach and trainer, right? You know, it's we as a training and coaching company, your KPI as a sales leader is to coach and train. We support that KPI,
Yeah.
right? But it's your KPI. So we got weekly coaching, we got monthly deep dives on skill, which become training, and then quarterly reviews. So I'm going to respond to the weekly coaching, Dr. Rapp. Like one, I think there's a couple places you're coaching. It's probably in your sales meeting. So in your sales meeting, as people are going through deals, their hot pipeline, there's some good spotlight or floodlight coaching that can go on. It's things you want everybody to hear, whether that's coaching them on certain behaviors. Maybe they're getting ready for a call, and there's an objection that's going to come up, and you do the adaptive process, which is also in our high performance sales coaching model. If you don't know what the adaptive process is, it's how you demonstrate the behavior that you want your salesperson. Then monthly, your monthly deep dives. Maybe it's a core target one-on-one. You're focused on one thing, like we have here, the discovery process, or what we call in a game selling, the evaluation process, or questioning skills, right? And then quarterly. Couple thoughts here, Dr. Rapp.
I think you nailed it, Lance. To your point earlier, if people don't have the time or if they can't get the investment from senior leadership, Gartner, and many are familiar with Gartner and their research numbers, they show that organizations that have a clear coaching cadence that they stick to, they have 23% higher quota attainment. So right there's your ROI. Okay. Once this is in place, people get comfortable, they get familiar with it, it becomes part of our system.
It
If we
does.
don't have this, if it doesn't exist, we just won't coach because life gets away from us. I look at it like going to the gym. Monday through Friday, I am a religious gym goer because I have a set schedule. Saturday, Sunday, when there's no schedule, those are the days I don't do anything
Great
because
analogy.
I
Great
don't
analogy.
have my 5 a.m. wake up, my 6 a.m. because now it's like, oh, I got all the time in the world and nothing happens. If there's not a repeatable process put into place and a cadence, I'm not going to do it as a leader, and my people just don't know, they don't understand that they should be expecting it. So the
Fair enough.
cadence truly matters.
It does. Let's talk about the communicating the lead as we start to bring this bird down for a landing.
Sure, sure. So we start to talk about a little bit of this, and when it comes down to it, it pulls the idea back through that we're still salespeople. Even as leaders, as managers,
That's right.
use those sales skills that we're so good at. You're a leader probably because you were very good at sales, which is questioning, listening, diagnosing the problem, the situation, the challenge, and delivering value and making recommendations on how to improve it, right? So do that. Get back to our grassroots as salespeople to do this and have these conversations.
Yeah, and you know that is that you're trying to persuade and influence. Influence is a characteristic, right? I wrote about in the human sales factor. I didn't even know that. I thought they were synonyms, but persuasion is to win by argument. Influence is to influence people with your character, right? So these are you got to assess your communication skills. Are you good or not? And then you got to connect with the team. You have to have a rapport, but they have to see you as a coach. Let's get into some like one topic as we got two more main topics here, but as we get into like these difficult coaching conversations,
Yeah.
yeah, like this could be deals are stalling, getting close to being put on a PIP, right? Not meeting minimum standards. Where do you go to with this one?
Well, the first thing right, is, and we don't have it here, but you got to pull the emotion out of this. It's difficult to do because these difficult conversations tend to be very emotionally charged. And it could be on both sides, the leader and the rep, but we got to pull this emotion out. If you're like me and Lance, I think you're similar to me. We suffer from a little emotional contagion. When somebody gets real high, we get real high. When somebody gets
Yeah,
low,
it's
we
it's
get,
not hard. It's not hard.
it's not hard, right? It's so, and the difficult conversation can be tough. And it can be, there can be some responses. And the big thing is we have to look at this, right? We kind of have to look at this root cause and separate ourselves from that part of it and just say, okay, like we're going to deal with the issue here. We're going to take this emotion, we're going to take, because that can exacerbate it. We can make it way worse.
No
And we
doubt,
could
no
we
doubt.
could get into the weeds and we could get into the very specific techniques of like never tell somebody to calm down because in the history of the universe that's never worked, right? Those things. But the big thing is clarifying. Help me understand, right? Before I just go in there, help me understand because I need to remove any biases, any stereotypes I have so I can understand your personal situation. Once I do that and I know the root cause, then okay, let's talk about, hey, we need to fix this. And it's a we thing, right? I'm not you, I. It's we need to
That's
fix
right.
this because here's the positive outcomes. Here's what your job's gonna, it's gonna be more enjoyable. There's gonna be good outcomes. And then we get into that again, the last step, like agreement. And what a PIP does, and I'm not saying we use a PIP here, but a performance improvement plan is simply the written agreement that we have. We're
Right.
just going to do that verbally.
And you just can't have multiple pips. You get once you get the performance improvement plan, you're there, and it shouldn't be a surprise. If I'm listening here, this piece, you got a choice as a sales leader when it comes to coaching and performance. Are you all about artificial harmony? Are you about constructive tension? And if you're a sales leader, you need to be about constructive tension, right? And that's what we're talking about. And our last slide is do you have a culture of coaching? Because that's the only thing that gets to high performance. And if you're a leader on this call, that's the goal. The goal is, I mean, I'm pretty sure if you're on this call, your goals next year won't be less than they were this year. I'm pretty sure they're all going to go up. I've yet to ever really see that. We're doing business with a plastics manufacturing company. We're training, we're installing sales management systems. They're up 11%. They're private equity owned. And you know what? Tariffs, oil, supply chain, they're still up because they have a culture of coaching, right? So you coach for behavior change and ROI or performance, right? Dr. Rapp said we use the data. And there's a lot of data out there, but you got to get data on your people, not
Yeah.
general data. And it has to be benchmark where it's coming. Just because you ask ChatGPT doesn't mean it's yours. And that's another thing also. A lot of your people use AI. It can write a best-selling script, but it doesn't mean they give a best-selling performance, right? That's the other thing. A structured cadence we talked about for accountability, and then are you tracking behaviors for performance? Dr. Rapp, I appreciate it as always. We got our podcast coming out in a couple of this week or next week, so we're excited about that. And Chip, if you want to, we got some time left over. Questions that hadn't been answered yet.
Yeah, let me dive into a couple of these questions. I guess there's a misconception, right? That top performers don't need coaching. What have you seen in reality? One of the attendees asked.
I think that goes back to, we discussed it a couple of times. Yes, they do. But it's a different form of coaching, right? It's going to be more of an engagement, more of an open conversation with them to really ask about because if I have my top performer, I may not be able to identify something immediately. And I may want to ask them, I do want to ask them, tell me if I could help you with one thing, if there's one area where I could make your job easier, smoother, remove barriers, help you improve, what would that area be? And I'm going to start there and I'm going to hear what they have to say. That may lead into more of a formal coaching engagement, as we discussed. It may be something that I can do to help support them behind the scenes, but I'm going to still have that conversation to better understand because even though they may be crushing it, they know that they have some inherent weaknesses or flaws or challenges that we might be able to support them with. So I'm
No doubt.
definitely not going to ignore that high performer, and I'm going to go in there with a pretty open mind to better understand, like, tell me what I can do. Tell me what that gap or weakness is that you're facing.
It's the other thing, like Dr. Rapp said, it's how you coach them. That's number one.
Yeah,
It's situational. If you have a coaching culture, you can sometimes you have to coach in front of other people, and that's okay. Constructive tension. Usually with top performers, it's in the inches though.
yeah,
There's not big gaping holes. You gotta be pretty analytical. You gotta see it. Like Dr. Rapp said, they'll tell you also. Our experience just as a training and a coaching company, I always find top performers are way more coachable and open to coaching than anybody else. I rarely find they're not coachable. I think what we think as leaders is we don't want to approach them or it might seem unapproachable. That's different, right? What else, Chip?
So we got another one in here. If your top performer numbers or top performer has numbers that are high and they don't think that they need coaching, how do you approach coaching them with the team? How do you include them?
I guess if I'm going to answer that, I'll go first, Dr. Rapp, on this one. I guess if I'm trying to understand the question, is the salesperson acting like they don't need coaching, or we don't know how to coach them? My challenge is if I would be coaching the salesperson on the fact that they don't think they need coaching. So that's a coaching opportunity as far as I'm concerned. It's an attitudinal type thing too. And you might have and every you have the outliers. I'm not saying every top performer, right? But most top performers I know, if you even play sports, are always have a performance coach, right?
Yep.
And just you didn't have to be a top performer as a sales leader to be a great coach. You know, think of all the golf coaches out there that weren't top golfers, but they're still great coaches. That's a whole different piece. So I don't know, Dr. Rapp, if you have a comment on that.
yeah. Sure, I'll jump on that real quick. So, Lance, I look at that as a different type of difficult conversation. A lot of times we look at our difficult conversations as our low performers. If we have a high performer that is uncoachable or thinks that, hey, I'm flawless, that's a different form of that conversation. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into it to find out and ask them, okay, like where has there been failure? Where have there been gaps? I'm going to, start looking at some of their deals and see where they lost deals. And I'm going to start to dig in that a little bit deeper because I've never met a rep that's closed every single deal they've ever started. And so start to break it down and say,
Wait, are
okay,
you saying you don't see closing ratios really above 30%? So that
well,
means
yeah, definitely not
70% failure
100%,
rate? Oh my
right?
God, I see the same thing.
Yeah.
Unreal.
And so I'm going to start there and be like, hey, look, okay, I understand, like you're very strong, but let's talk about some of these deals that didn't close and let's understand why. And again, it's not attacking. I'm not going to get upset or frustrated. We're going to talk about some of the things that makes them a little bit uncomfortable,
That's
and
right.
then it should start to emerge.
You could always, if they weren't open to it, coach them on humility. I mean,
Well, yeah.
you could, let's talk about humility here a little bit, right? So it's always coachable. Chip, anything else, or do you want to get into the final offer here?
Yeah, let's get one more in here. There's quite a few. Let's just get one more. How would I know if my company does in fact have a coaching culture or simply claims to? If it doesn't, how would I create one?
You know, culture is one of those things you know it when you see it, right? Like it's like one of those. And I would, if I was talking to whoever said that, I would say, right? And probably, and not being snarky about this, but it's sometimes values are claimed, not demonstrated. But like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes companies put out values like we work with integrity. Well, you should, right? Or we're customer service oriented. Really, you should, right? So, like you would know if they're open to coaching, and most great leaders are also coachable, also, right? My chief operating officer probably coaches me more than anybody. She's like, yeah, it's probably not a good approach. You might want to do it this way. I probably would have done it this way. But if I'm not open to coaching, she's not going to be open to coaching either. So you would know in the interaction, and you would know from your boss, are they open to feedback? Are they open to coaching? Right. So,
Yeah, very good. All right,
I'll jump on
go ahead,
that
Dr.
real quick if I could, Chip. Um,
Please.
I work with a lot of students who are accepting jobs, and I actually get this question a lot because they'll be like, well, they said they have training, they said they have coaching, they said this. How do I really know? And so if you're at the organization, to Lance's point, right, we can see if these things are happening sometimes. If we're newer, we're just starting or joining, I always ask the question, well, what does the cadence look like? And a manager that's truly doing it or a leader, they can tell you. They're like, hey, here's the system I follow. If somebody's like, oh, well, we get to it whenever you need it, you probably don't have a strong coaching culture, right? It's like if I ask somebody, hey, what's the play? What's the plan? And they're like, here it is, bam, 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 bam. Then it's probably in place. If they're like, well, we'll figure it out as we go, then more than likely there's some gaps there.
All right.
Very good. A wise man said in a book called Selling is an Away Game, sales culture is either created by default or design. And I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we have, as we wrap up here, we have some resources for our attendees. The top QR code will take you to our high performance sales coaching program overview on our website. So check that out and explore and hopefully sign up. Also, the bottom QR code is to download our ultimate sales coaching guide with everything we discussed today, with all kinds of techniques, tips, and tricks. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Rapp. Thank you, Lance.
Thanks, Chip.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a great day.